Thanks for coming, guys. I'm delighted for the invitation. I glanced across our firm the other day and realized 15% of the company came out of Harvard in one shape or other. They are quick to point out that they are the top 15% of the firm, although that remains somewhat unconfirmed. But delighted to be here and to talk about innovation. I think all of us drawn to innovation are kindred souls in a way. We're all willing to live with uncertainty, to step out on the tightrope every day with a very legitimate risk that we're gonna fall down and splat on the ground. And today's conversation will be about unpacking what works for us to transform the odds of getting the big idea that makes the leap from the post-it note to the street to the balance sheet. But let's talk a little bit about this word innovation and the great gray matter here in this room. The human mind is this immense repository of images, associations, and connotations that build up over time and idle in the neurons, waiting for the right piece of stimulus to set them off. And in this absurdly and wonderfully dynamic age that we live in now, where life and technology and business keep leaping forward in ways that empower us and amaze us. This word on the wall behind me has become as loaded with meaning as any other thing you might hold up against it. The things this word innovation evokes are timeless but completely timely in the same breath. You've got fire, the wheel, and coffee by the pod, the designer's soft clay and the pang of the shiny new object. Innovation is the mating dance of art and science in a way. It's the billion-dollar startup born on a shoestring. Better mousetraps, soaring share prices, and the relentless forward march of human endeavor. That's quite a lot of punch for any single word to pack. But of all these incredible meanings that innovation inspires and carries with it, there's one in particular that has really emerged since I started playing in innovation that I think will change the conversation around it in the decade ahead. And that meaning is growth. Now, when I started playing in innovation, there was no pressure on it. Companies had lots of easy, awesome ways to grow. You could roll into China, launch a new flavor, riff on the proven models. And innovation was great when it happened, right? Once a decade, if you got a lightning strike, that was awesome. It was gravy. But the world has changed, and with that has come a new level of pressure and importance and imperative attached to innovation. And now that's a great thing, right? Because as human beings, we want to do things that are important and meaningful, and innovation being more important is good and exciting. I think in many ways we can say there has never been a better time to be an innovator. On lots of levels. The talent rushing into innovation today is staggering. We're now hiring people with PhDs in innovation out of Oxford. I have no idea what they teach them there, but they're awesome. They hit the ground running. The toys and tools we have are access to conversations with the public. My son Jacob's here today, and at his 8th grade science fair the other day, there sat a 3D printer as part of one of the kids' projects. And I'm going like, oh my God, there's a 3D printer in a science fair. And these kids are like, yeah, whatever, It's just so normal and natural. So hopefully Jacob will be the class of 2023 here and will innovate circles around all of us. But all these tools are incredible. The money flowing into innovation is incredible and exciting. But in the same breath, we can say there has never been a tougher time to be an innovator for a whole host of reasons. And tough isn't a bad thing either. Tough brings out the best in us. Now, many of you, I'm sure, will go off to set up your awesome startups. Everyone's flocking to that world, and that is an awesome and exciting thing. It just means you're not going to be the only one showing up with an amazing pitch to an amazing VC looking to write a check for something. That's become more competitive, and that's exciting and awesome. If you work for a big company, you find yourself in a different set of testing circumstances, where you sit at the crossroads of big growth goals, very tight resource constraints in a post-Six Sigma world. That people aren't letting the lavishing the huge budgets they once did, very low risk tolerance, and pressure for near-term ROI. So that's the typical brief that comes across our transom. I want huge growth with no risk and no resources. Awesome, right? Good luck with that. But you know, that's the reality. So, and again, it brings out the best in us. Some of the reasons why it is a tough time to be an innovator, especially for big companies, we've seen the erosion of barriers to entry. It used to be if you became a market leader in a business, you could kind of kick back and milk that for 30, 40 years. Today, market leaders come and go with a speed we've never seen before. Retailers have consolidated. These fickle consumers love you, millennials. You should hear the nasty things big companies say about you. You guys, you know, you don't latch onto a brand and stay with it for life. You change jobs like you change socks. And, you know, it's so much harder to know that you've got a business that sticks today. Disintermediation, should a client of ours like Citibank be worried about what Chase is doing, or one of you guys sitting in your garage solving something that is going to just rock their world? We've got this amazing dynamic of open innovation, which is so exciting. The thought that you can share your problems with the world and have them come back and solve it for you. But your competitor has access to that same world, so where's the competitive advantage? And the speed with which new ideas spread is awesome when you're on this part of the curve as a startup, pretty frightening when you're on the other side. Just ask MySpace, you know, and what keeps Zuck up at night is the speed with which the next thing can take hold. Now, all of these things are tricky, but they would be readily manageable if it weren't for the last thorny thing, which is that the innovation models in use today fail. Not sometimes, but almost all the time. If you start the clock from the moment a bunch of brilliant people like you are put in a room with a big growth target on the wall and a blank piece of paper, the odds of nothing coming out of that are north of 90%. Now, back when innovation was nice to have when it happened, that was okay. But as innovation becomes synonymous with growth, you know, how long can we tolerate that as innovation is mission critical? Any other mission-critical business practice, like do the delivery trucks get product to the stores on time? Do high-quality products come off the assembly line? Do we tally up our quarterly earnings correctly? A 90% failure rate would be heads rolling and headlines in the newspapers. So now, failing is part of the innovation process, although too often people are merging iterating, which is great, right? And as long as you're still iterating, you haven't failed, you're just iterating. Failure is when you stop iterating. You've run out of money. You've run out of time. Your project's dead, right? On to the next thing. So, we've got to, you know, raise the hit rate somehow. So we asked ourselves why. Now, most people are saying failure is the natural state of innovation, and you know, shrug it off, you know, like ice cream melting on a sunny day. We just asked ourselves, well, you know, lots of things have been seen that way in human history. Before the Wright brothers came along, one would have thought that crashing to the ground is the natural state of human attempts at flying, right? Post the Wright brothers, we realized, you know, actually air travel could have been a very reliable thing. It was the method that was wrong, not the nature of air travel. So we were crazy enough to ask ourselves, you know, is there some flaw in how we're going about this that could be flipped? Now, we didn't know. We just had a hypothesis that there might be, and set out, you know, as quite a mission-based business with a simple goal to transform the odds of innovators and innovation projects, making that leap from the Post-it note to the street and the balance sheet. So how do you shift the odds of success? Well, the value of shifting the odds means very different things to different people in the innovation food chain. If you're a CEO, upping the odds means how do I ensure that innovation is going to deliver reliable growth for me, right? They hate spikes, they hate unreliability. They don't care about one individual project succeeding. They need the aggregate body of innovation work to be driving the growth that shareholders expect. For the CFO, it's about ROI. If you're an individual innovator or leading a project in a big company, you actually don't care about the overall success rate. If 1 out of 100 succeeds, that's fine. You just really care about how do I be the one, right? So changing the odds of success is a big deal. And for us, we did something that was either brave or stupid. With failure rates as high as they are, we said let's tie our business model to our ability to deliver concrete, successful outcomes on innovation projects and put a lot of our fees at risk. We're still here. I still think it was crazy, but it helped, you know, put our feet to the fire to try to solve the methodology questions. One slide of what we are. If you don't know, we're an innovation consultancy, about a decade old, offices in New York and London. We work with Fortune 500 companies, PE firms, and interesting emerging businesses to basically create innovation strategies and turn those strategies into concrete offerings that create revenue. We are outcome obsessed and paid on outcomes. We're a multidisciplinary business. A third of the company is commercial strategy, a third of it is what we call idea development, and a third of it is design, but all those are integrated, as I'll talk about a bit more. Over the past decade, we've been delighted to work with some of the best companies in the world. What's really helpful in our mission of how do we solve what works and get to a real hit rate, it's the breadth of these companies. So you've got great consumer goods companies, the Cokes, the P&Gs, the Nestle's, great tech companies like Samsung, LG, communications companies, financial services companies, hospitality companies, retailers. So this breadth has allowed us to see patterns, across the way these different organizations were approaching innovation and start to decode what it was going to take to get more success. What we do for them, nothing especially unique about that. We diagnose where growth opportunity lies. We do deep exploratory research. We shape innovation strategies and then turn those strategies into stuff, whether it's physical products or services or new experiences or new systems. Yes, so there's nothing especially unique about where we play. But we will talk about how we play, which is a function of some interesting insights. Just so you don't have to take notes, I'll tell you that our book is out. It's called How to Kill a Unicorn. It's not the kind of unicorn they love in Silicon Valley, which is a business with 27 cents in revenue and $1 billion valuation. This refers to a different kind of unicorn, an idea you see in fledgling state that will only be profitable in some remote imaginary world. You can't hitch your plow to a unicorn, so this is about the pursuit of big inspired ideas that become real. I don't care about selling books. Go steal it from the bookstore, create a diversion. That's kind of best practice. But to distill it down, what are some ways that we found that we can really tip the odds of innovation success? The biggest insight behind what we've done is to say, actually, when you stop and think about it, innovation is always a two-sided problem, where there are two separate sets of needs that have little to do with each other that both need to be solved for innovation to work. Now, why do we think this way? If we look at the workings of a typical innovation funnel, most organizations have this type of thing, or if you are thinking in startup terms, think of this as progressing through the VC world. At the fat end of the funnel is the land of analytics and business strategy. So here you have management consultancies or internal corporate strategy teams defining these opportunity areas and where to place spaces to begin to ignite innovation, usually aggregated out of a host of data points. We get to the middle of the funnel, and here is the design function, where we are teasing out those unmet consumer needs and marrying them up with awesome products that fulfill those needs, and design. All the great talk this morning about empathy, about all those design signals, all those things are incredibly powerful. Then we get to the skinny far end of the funnel, and a couple things stand out. Aside from the numbers game, where so many things go in and so few actually make it out the other side to touch the street and the balance sheet, there's one other really interesting distinguishing characteristic. All the stuff that comes out is two-sided solutions that fully solve the needs of a consumer and the needs of a business. Now let's pick that apart a little bit. There are no big surprises here. What do consumers need? Well, they need a better life. They need better experiences, better functionality in their products, better relationships, optimism, and all that great Maslow stuff, comfort, security, and so on, right? What does the business need? No big surprises here. I certainly hope not, right? They need strategic fit. They need operational fit with the capabilities they have. They need smart decisions about where we're going to play. Do we have a right to win in this new battle we're stepping into? How am I going to make this product work? How am I going to make money? And how do I manage risk and reward? Now, all this seems dead obvious, except for one thing. When you stop and think about it, these two sets of needs have nothing to do with each other, except for one thing. Neither can be solved without fully solving for the other. What do I mean by that? If we tease out this incredible unmet consumer need and match it up with an amazing product. But as I try to move it through my organization to get it out to the street, if I trip and fall on any of those things on the right, if, gee, it doesn't really line up with the strategy I've sold into investors, or ops can't make it work, or it just seems like a risky strategy, or the ROI isn't there, that great idea will never touch a single consumer's life. And the converse is true as well. The perfect strategy that can't be turned into a compelling offering that makes you go, oh my God, where is that bet on my life? Then that money will never be realized either. So innovation is a two-sided problem. Now, when we think back to that funnel, the process of innovation isn't actually built to create these two-sided solutions. It is largely left to chance, and in that we see a lot of the reason why projects run aground so often. In a way, methodology has imposed companies with an impossible choice. Do you want a plane that can take off but can't land, or a plane that can land but can't take off? Personally, I prefer the one that can land but can't take off. It won't get you anywhere, but it won't hurt you. But that is kind of where innovation methodology has left us. Design thinking is a brilliant leap forward in how we think about innovation, right? I'll be both a big fan and a critic in the same way I am with the Yankees. I love them, they drive me crazy. It has swung the pendulum. Okay, before design thinking came along, companies were putting out products that were very easy for consumers to say no to because they weren't really designed for them. Post-design thinking, we're seeing the pendulum has just swung the other way. Innovation processes are delivering ideas that are very easy for the company to say no to, though they'd be great for consumers. So the next move, the writing is kind of on the wall. Now, there's an interesting phenomenon, sort of at the heart of this, which is something I'd call energizing tensions. The electricity that flies when seemingly opposing things are thrust together. Why is Breaking Bad so irresistible as a show? Well, it's because you've got these two completely opposing notions of what Walt is, right? Walt is a nebbishy, geek, science teacher who gave away $1 billion idea early in life and has never forgiven himself. At the same time, he's a badass drug kingpin whacking people all over the place. And day to day, these two Walts keep crashing together, and that's what brings us back over and over. Jefferson's up there because of democracy. What is democracy but the collision of two opposing forces of freedom and governance, right? Before democracy came along, you could either be free or governed. And democracy said, hey, you know what? You can actually be both. How awesome is that? And Apple, of course, powered by the collision of technology and humanity, right? And with this, a realization that each side needed what the other had and had what the other needed, right? He used new technologies to make devices seem more human and less technological, right? It's an amazing embrace of that tension. Now, innovation has its own tension. The tension between what we call magic, the creative pursuit of the compelling new offering for the consumer, and what we shorthand as money, solving all those critical needs of the business. And the only innovations that make it, have solved both, right? Now, in looking at innovation methodology, we said, well, look, if design has taught us anything, the Bauhaus edict that form should follow function, we said, well, look, the function of innovation process isn't to match up consumer needs with product ideas. It's to deliver stuff out of the pipeline. The consumer need is a critical piece of it. But we said, look, if it's got to solve for both, let's build the whole process that way. So at the beginning of the process, let's lay out all the needs of the business and lay out all the needs of the consumer and start to look for intersections where these things come together. To do that, we went on an awkward journey of realizing there needed to be a duality of capabilities as well. We started out all on the left side using traditional design practices and coming up with wonderful ideas that would go off to die because they weren't built to solve for the other side of the ledger. They would excite consumers and not excite CFOs and CEOs, and they would die, and that drove us crazy because the whole point is to make stuff real. So we built out this other side of our model where we bring in all the stuff you'd expect of a great management consultancy, married up with all the stuff you'd expect of a great design firm, and have them joined at the hip. Part of the issue in current methodology is the sequential nature of it. You spend all your time solving for the consumer and say, oh yeah, there's an implementation phase where we'll work out whether we can actually make this thing or make any money. So this is an integrated an integrated approach day one to the end of the line. Now, happiness is a nice warm metaphor. I love this metaphor that you're out to thread two needles at once within innovation, the needs of the business and the needs of the consumer. Now, the funny thing is, if you just look at one of these two needles you have to thread, it's actually very easy to thread because you can come at it from any angle you like. But the odds of the angle you take through the first getting through the second are very, very slim if you're not looking at the orientation of those two things. That is part of what innovation has been missing. So to get out of theory and into some tangible stuff, here's a case study of this sort of two-sided methodology at work. Let's go from Fahrenheit 212 to Fahrenheit 118, which was the temperature in Dubai when we started work for this bank, the biggest private bank in the Emirates. They came to us with a very clear commercial challenge, but a very hard one. They wanted to move the needle on the average number of products that a customer of the bank has. Now, if you work in banking, the easiest way to drive your profit is just to pile more products into the customers you already have. Your cost of servicing them doesn't go up, but your revenue does. The problem was we had to transcend a deep underlying truth. Now, in this country, we don't like our banks. I mean, I love my bank clients, but we kind of tolerate and are annoyed by our banks. In the Emirates, they actively distrust them, and they are consciously trying to spread their assets around a lot of different banks to avoid being exposed to the bank changing its policies in a way that hurts them or going under. So they're actively trying to spread their money around. So how do we overcome this? The approach we take in a two-sided method is for all the intensity a design method would say you throw into understanding the consumer, we do all that, but with an equally intensive interrogation of the realities of the business. If the insight is the flint from which innovation sparks fly, and sharp insights are the ones that really make it work, you can't get sparks by banging marshmallows together, we are chasing two discrete types of insight. Consumer insight, 7 different kinds we hunt for typically, functional, emotional, behavioral, insights about the interactions of objects and people and relationships, but also chasing the commercial insights about the organization, the P&L, the technologies that it has, and fusing innovations out of these different types of insights. Out of this two-track insight hunt in the Emirates, aside from getting very dusty and sweaty doing all this work, we get onto the meaning of human loyalty, which is a durable, long-term thing. It's not a quick one-off. It's, the more you put into a relationship, the more you get back over time. We got insights about how financial security is a function of many aggregated decisions. There are few decisions in life other than putting all your money into a startup that can totally, transform your financial picture. It's a piece-by-piece thing as these consumers see it. We saw a unique sense of time. In most countries, you talk about money and people immediately start talking about the future. Here, they were connecting past and future, which was an interesting theme. We had no idea what it was going to mean, but it was really powerful. And we also saw that the benefits of consolidating their assets in one bank were, completely without any rational or emotional basis, right? Banks think, well, of course, it's, convenient to put all your stuff under one roof. There was no tangible reason to it. Now, on the commercial side, we find a completely different set of insights. Why do banks treat all their products as one-offs rather than some kind of systematized something? Because their IT systems do. They have these Lego-like IT systems. Deutsche Bank actually has more IT people than SAP. It's indicative of this kind of Lego-like, system complexity. We saw that the value of a long-term customer relationship was not in any way manifest in what they would actually do for that customer. We interrogated the realities of the bank rep on the branch floor who had no tools other than a rate sheet to put in front of a potential customer. And we saw that the biggest barrier to connecting products together to create greater cross-product adoption was actually the P&L of the business. Each division had its own P&L. The guy who runs mortgages, he doesn't care once he's signed up a 30-year customer. They're dead to him for 30 years. He's not pushing them across the bank. And there's no system and no incentive whatsoever to do that. So we aggregate all of these different types of insights, distill down the core problem for the consumer and the business, and out comes a solution. I'll play a video prototype here that brings that to life.
be human is to dream. Some dreams are simple, some are grand, some come true quickly, some take more time. But between those that remain just dreams and those that come true lies one simple truth. They come together not all at once, but piece by piece. This is the inspiration behind a whole new approach to banking, taking shape before your very eyes. Salam Mosaic by Meshrik. Through Mosaic, something extraordinary happens. Adding new pieces to your financial picture doesn't just make the picture more complete. It actually transforms the pieces that came before, right before your eyes. At your branch, your Salam host will show you how. As Mosaic makes your money worth more, earning you exquisite 7-star rewards and opening doors to a better lifestyle. For instance, you'll see how adding a new credit card magically raises the interest rate on the savings account you already had. Adding a term deposit improves the terms of your existing mortgage and credit cards. Adding mobile banking makes annual credit card fees disappear and gets you complimentary monthly wire transfers. And the longer you bank with us, the more points you earn on every transaction towards Salam's unmatched 7-star rewards and unexpected privileges. In fact, everything you add improves everything that came before it, because suddenly, all the pieces are working together. Salam Mosaic, where dreams take shape right before your eyes.
So it's quite a radical value prop, that the way I'm going to get you into the next product at the bank is to change the products you already have. The thought that signing up for a new checking account could drop the rate on a loan I've already committed to, and have it happen in real time on the floor of the branch, not requiring renegotiation, it's pretty stunning. Suddenly there was a very rational basis. This design metaphor of the mosaic really symbolized consumers' belief that this is an aggregation of pieces into a bigger whole. What happened with this, the revenue target of the bank was exceeded by 35%. They'll probably make more money selling the IP behind it over time, and I'll deconstruct that piece a little bit. There's an orientation we have to bring to innovation to move success rates, which is to solve for both the wow and the how. The wow, the big idea, the amazing new possibility is fantastic, but without the how of seeing how you can actually make it work, that great idea will never see those consumers. Now the how is not just about feasibility and viability. I hate those two words. They're kind of like, oh, make it just barely doable and just barely financially attractive enough for the business so that things go forward. When we say the how, we mean this long list of very tough questions. How does this idea fit company strategy? How is this a smart choice on where to play? How does it leverage my assets? How does it create competitive advantage? How am I going to win this battle it's throwing me into? How can I manage risk? How can I be sure I'm going to get an attractive ROI? Now, so how do you tip the odds? A big piece of it is by moving the hard questions you know you're going to face to the front of the process. Now, if your name is Bilbo Baggins, you can set out on an epic journey with bare feet, a loaf of bread, and a pocket knife, and not worry about how you're going to slay the dragon until you face him and magically some sword will appear or something, and it'll all happen. Innovation doesn't work that way. We know those tough how questions are coming. We've got to bake that into the process from day one. So in the case of the bank, the wow of this great value proposition, this great design metaphor, was backed by a how. We had to create an algorithm that would actually move money from one division of the bank to another to allow an instant, real-time calculation of the lifetime value of a customer and give them a certain amount of points off of their rates on existing products. The algorithm was mind-boggling. We were thinking about that before we even nailed what the final value prop to consumers was going to be, because it was so hard and important. We knew we needed a new incentive scheme, to a revenue sharing agreement across the divisions. All of these how pieces were being worked in real time before we got to the wow. So how do we up the odds? Well, we're chasing what we call two-sided solutions. Okay, if innovation is a two-sided problem, what does a two-sided solution look like? The easiest way to bring it to life is to pull some examples from the street. The Mini Cooper is a brilliant two-sided solution. It solves a big need for consumers. Now, before the Mini came along, if you wanted to drive an efficient, affordable car. You know, you were going to drive something that was no fun at all and had zero personal statement. Pull up in front of the bar in your old Corolla, and nobody's going to come say, hey, can I go for a ride? So along comes the Mini Cooper, and suddenly affordable cars are fun, sexy, expressive, and just really dynamic. But the genius that made it work as a business actually had nothing to do with that. The genius of Mini Cooper as a business is the automotive paradigm was that to serve a lot of different customer segments, you have to launch 6 or 7 different models. Each of those models needs its own manufacturing line, its own tooling cost, and every time you change a model, you change everything. The Mini Cooper was built from the ground up to be massively customizable off of a single operational platform. So that's a great two-sided solution. Great win for consumer, big win for the business that had nothing actually to do with what the big consumer win is. This is a really cute, small example that I love. Korea is a very cold place when winter comes, and you jump on a plane to Bali or wherever you want to go and get away. You bring your big down jacket, and as you board the plane, we've all lived this movie. What happens? Well, people put their overhead bags up there, and like pretty soon, it's annoying, and you're carrying all this stuff. So for consumers, Korean Air came along and said, you know what? We'll take that coat from you, okay? You can check it at the gate, and we'll give it back to you when you get back from the beach, right? Because that thing is of no value to you. The reason they did this was not to score a couple of points and say, hey, consumers, aren't we wonderful in coddling you? It was to solve an operational nightmare, because a third of the people would be on the plane, they'd shove their bags in, they'd shove into big coats, and you're that guy coming down behind them, and the bins are all full, and chaos breaks loose, right? The flight attendant's freaking out, somebody's cramming stuff on top of your breakables, total meltdown. It delays departure times. Savvy travelers want to know who's flying on time. So they did this because it was going to save them the cost of idling engines on the tarmac, save these operational nightmares. Consumer gets coddled, but there's a huge win for the business behind it. Another great example, one that we were delighted to work on ourselves, is Coke's Freestyle system. If any of you guys encountered this, it's in a lot of fast food joints. What was the consumer side of this equation? Well, beverages have proliferated, right? Lots of new categories coming along. We're now at a point where we know exactly what we want walking into a situation, and if we can't get it, we'd rather go thirsty. QSR, fast food restaurants were losing tons of beverage money because they had 6 choices, and consumers were coming in with hundreds of choices in their heads. Now, at retail, they've blown open the stores and blown open the fridge to accommodate that variety, but the fast food restaurants weren't going to build bigger restaurants to fit more beverages. Coke came along and said, I can give consumers hundreds of choices that they want, but I can do it in the same amount of real estate that it took for the old 5-spout fountain. An amazing piece of technology that came out of dialysis machines that allowed kind of microdosing, allowed them to make 100 beverages in the space that used to only be able to serve up 5. So it's a great two-sided solution. So there's the hardware of changing innovation success rates, and this two-sided methodology, for us, has absolutely transformed success rates. I don't know if it will have the same effect for other folks. But in addition to that hardware, there's a lot of software, right? Those in-the-moment decisions you make. So I'll share some perspectives on that as well. One big one is that we all talk a lot about disruptive innovation. Clayton Christensen has made amazing contributions from this institution to the innovation conversation around this. The funny thing is, as a boots-on-the-ground innovator, disruptive innovation theory doesn't help you at all. It's great for CTOs to be sure their company doesn't get left behind on a leap to a new technology curve, but you've got to deliver products that can make it to market quickly when you're a boots-on-the-ground team. So what we've realized is if you want to transform the odds of something working, disrupt demand, not the company. What do we mean by that? Well, there are 2 kinds of disruption that really matter to a boots-on-the-ground project team. Am I disrupting the marketplace and creating new demand for my company? And to what degree am I disrupting the company in order to be able to get that innovation out to the street? The funny thing is that these 2 types of disruption work in opposite directions, right? The more I can disrupt demand is the better. But the more I disrupt the company in trying to unlock that demand, the harder it is. So we've built this model that lets us filter ideas that are in gestation and say, all right, well, is this disrupting demand in the company just a little bit? or am I, getting to that sweet spot? That upper right box is the promised land that gets you promoted, where I'm delivering massive disruption of demand with minimal disruption of the company. So that's one of the pieces of software. Another big one is to bend the assets you have. Too often we, as innovators, instinctively look outside of the capabilities of the company when we're trying to create something big. And you almost, on some level, associate big with really hard to do. The too little energy is applied to looking at the assets a business has and saying, how can I bend, pivot, manipulate those assets to create amazing new value in the marketplace, that creates big new demand. We have to bring an orientation that says existing assets are not constraints. They are the canvas we're going to paint on. Imagine if Miles Davis had said working with a 12-note musical scale is too big a creative constraint. I can't create anything cool out of that. Or if Da Vinci had said rectangles of canvas, no, that's way too narrow. We wouldn't have the Mona Lisa, right? So as innovators, we've got to bring that same kind of orientation. I'll crack through one more case study before we open up for Q&A. But it hits at that subject of how do I unlock big new value from existing assets. Samsung is a beloved client of ours. We've probably done 25 projects with them over the years. They came to us with a really interesting challenge. They are the world's leading manufacturer of LCD panels. Now they're a vertically integrated business, so they make the raw component panels, which they will sell to Samsung's TV division, but they'll also sell them to Sony or to anybody else who wants to make a TV, because this is a component business unit that we're serving here. They had a very big problem. It was one of the biggest profit centers in the company, but margins were plummeting in the existing LCD markets, which were TVs, phones, and computing products. So the brief was to define and ignite new markets and new added value applications that would put some margin back into LCD. The constraint, sorry guys, no new technologies. You got to work with what we already have, and this is an increasingly common brief. So as an innovation team, the where to play, well, we knew what we couldn't do, right? So give me anything that is not a TV, a computer, or a phone, and that kind of left the great vastness of life as the where to play. So we had to look at any aspect where we could unlock something. In the strategy phase, we're looking at those where to play spaces, and we had very clear commercial parameters. We had to be able to move over 600,000 screens. They had to be 10 inches or bigger. We needed concentrated markets that could be activated with just a few handshakes, stuff that could launch quickly. At the solutions phase, we get into actually building the products and value props. Through this interplay, and I love the metaphor of the cat's cradle as how we go about innovation, kind of looping around the commercial and consumer perspectives all the way throughout the process. We got to about 10 addressable markets, ran them through an aggressive filtering process. Is this market big enough? Is it concentrated enough? Do the potential customers here have big problems? We filter them on a scale we call big, fast, doable. Okay? Is this going to be big? And do we think it can happen and happen quickly? It doesn't mean that things that are going to be slow to get big are unattractive. Just we want a portfolio that balances that out. You want some things that are going to happen quickly. And a very unexpected opportunity emerged. We started looking at the vending business and realized there are 30 million vending machines worldwide. If we could just tap into 5% of those, we would hit the kind of scale goal we needed to hit. They're physically big, so a 10-inch screen is less than you'd want. 70% of those machines are owned by just 3 companies, Coke, Pepsi, and Suntory. So we knew if we could get a couple companies excited, we could make it happen. They had electricity, which was kind of important for LCD. In fact, one of the creative exercises we did was say, okay, guys, pretend you're an electron, all right, and just go out into your lives, since this business could come from anywhere. Where there is electricity, there may be opportunity for us, and where there isn't, there probably isn't. We also saw that this was a sunset industry, using 1970s levers and pulleys technology. Look what Nest has done to the thermostat. We looked at, this was pre-Nest, but we looked at vending in very much the same way. So let me show you the video prototype bringing this idea to life.
Once upon a time, a vending machine was just a distribution point. A store where there wasn't a store. A box of levers, ramps, wires, and wheels, with a plug in the back and a slot in the front. and a door for your pop to pop out of, with a little bump and shake. But one day, it changed. The LCD screen became a window to vending's future, turning that dumb box of gears into a seducer. It became a marketing chameleon, promoting every brand it held, not just one. It could automatically stop promoting the stuff that it sold out of and push what it still had. In an age where innovation is the lifeblood of food and beverage companies, vending became innovation's best friend, putting a new product's message in front of a consumer who is ready to buy with coins in hand, and offering trial-inducing pricing for the most impactful sampling in food and beverage history. The transformation was easy to implement. All it took to unleash these new machines' potential was inserting a data disk while restocking the machine. The effects on the business were immediate. Purchase velocity, total sell-through, and getting new products talked about and tasted on the street. Then, someone made a connection that pushed it further, marrying the screens with wireless connectivity, turning disconnected assets into the world's first media network owned by a marketer. So a push of a button at headquarters could put marketing ideas on the streets of the world in seconds, with real-time sales data streaming back, turning a vending network into a living lab. Marketers realized that this was not simply a TV on the street, but a new medium between the reach of TV and the personal response of the web, connecting headquarters to the street, connecting vending to its future. Network vending, shaping the machine.
So to unpack the process behind this a little bit, this entire thing began with an observation at a pizza joint. It was a bunch of teenagers basically mugging a vending machine. They were kind of knocking it around, and yeah, they were trying to get something out of it, but it wasn't just that, it was that they were mocking it. They were like, you stupid, idiotic, dumb thing, give me what I'm after. And it just got us wondering, you know, when we're mocking things in our lives, you know, there's probably opportunity for invention, you know, follow the mocking. So a phone call from the pizza joint to our money guys. 24 hours later, they come back with a 360-degree assessment of the vending industry. 30 million machines, it's big enough, it's concentrated enough, it's broken. The companies in the business have no ability to invest in innovation, which they desperately need. So that got the dominoes, you know, falling toward this. Then we zig back and say, well, let's understand consumer pain points and their desired experience, and what could vending be for consumers. Although no consumer's ever asked to buy a vending machine, right? They just need, you know, to commit a buck to a drink. Then we into the vending industry pain points, technologies, UX design. Then looking at CPG companies' views of vending, because they're the ones who write the checks. Now here we came to the real problem. Big consumer goods companies don't think of vending as strategic. It is a dumb distribution tactic. So we had to transform the way vending was perceived. This whole application we built was about turning vending from a dumb distribution point into a marketing network where they could connect with consumers and build brand relationships, which is totally strategic for them. We get into the functionality. We had to understand the realities of the vending operator, the guy Phil who drives the truck, who, you know, drives across town and gets to a machine that's full, down to the economics of the machines. Somebody asked a great question before about business-to-business innovation and how you think about that. We love the metaphor of seeing the world the way the fly does, which is, you know, there are all these different compartmentalized markets that you have to solve for. So in this case, we had to solve for 5 different entities: what was attractive for Samsung, what was attractive for the FMCG companies that buy the machines, what was attractive for consumers, for the guys who make the machines, and for the operators. So this value prop that was built out, you know, was hitting them all. In the end, the Financial Times did an analysis that found that interactive vending machines are 3 times the cost of regular vending machines, but with 10 times the ROI, not just from selling a lot more stuff, but from impressions and building that customer relationship. What happened with this was what you'd want to happen in building a platform. The ecosystem was ignited. Coke announced their commitment at the Beijing Olympics and have, you know, gone pretty broad with it. Unilever put a layer of facial recognition software on top of the platform. If your smile is big enough, you get a free ice cream. Kraft Foods did an overlay of mood recognition software where it would actually recommend, you know, a meal based on your, you know, how it scanned your mood. Although one has to ask, shouldn't they just do a body scan and say, well, should we maybe recommend a salad? companies that never would have touched vending with a 10-foot pole, like the beauty industry, so image conscious, and vending was so low rent. L'Oreal has jumped in with a machine that's up at Bryant Park in New York, where Fashion Week happens. It has a full-length mirror, and as a woman stands in front of it, it's scanning her while she's scanning herself. It's looking at her skin tone, the colors of her outfit, and recommending from out of 400 SKUs that are in it, saying, well, here, we would recommend these for you. So, really kind of transform the space. And, I think there's a lesson here. If you're out to enter a business you're not in, you'll probably fail. You got to come in trying to transform that business. Look what Nest did, or look what this did there. I'll cap it there because I'm rambling a bit. But yeah. So in summation, I'll just kind of jump to the end of the end. What has this model done for us and done for our clients? There's a core reality here. Companies don't actually launch new products. They launch business propositions that have amazing products sitting at the center of them. So this two-sided orientation has helped really ensure that they get the amazing product that is the amazing business proposition. For us, this method has transformed the odds. If 10% is the success rate that we're typically seeing in innovation, in the last 12 months, we had a 74% hit rate of a project delivering stuff to the street and the balance sheet. We've got 81 ideas currently live in development pipelines across a whole lot of great companies. Amazingly, we had 3,500 people apply for jobs in our 50, 60-person firm last year. Hopefully some of you guys will. The track record's really good out of here. This outcome-based compensation model, we're still here. About a third or 40% of our revenue in a given year comes from the performance-based component of our model. We've tried to write the playbook to help other folks do it. Again, I don't care if you buy the book, just steal it, whatever. Hope it helps. But thank you very much.